Yo, what's up? This is KallaTheYapper, and I'm back with another reaction. Tonight, I'm gonna react to a Glaive Kyo video, which is called "The Flawed Masterpiece of Genshin Impact." Now, I didn't know what this video was about until I decided to scroll through my my videos to react to playlist, at least my part 2 playlist, and I clicked this video just to see what exactly was this about. Was this like a usual generalization of Genshin Impact as a whole game? Like, what exactly was it about? First couple seconds into the video, it's about NodKrai and its story. And I'm like, okay, here we go again. Cause I'm about to see if he about to pull the same BS he pulled back in that version 5.7 story when it came down to his criticism of that. We're about to see right now. Cause if I see it, I'm gonna call it out as it is. Now, if people call me a shill for that, calling out BS when I see it, it is what it is, twin. Me and you just disagree. But when BS is BS, we have to call out BS. Also, I wonder where his video at for like the 2.7 story for, you know, Wuwa, or any story related to Wuwa, unless he thinks everything in Wuthering Waves is just gas. Because, you know, I know he was gassing up that Furlova story, but like I didn't see him make no videos, you know, touching on the other stories that happened before that and after. Interesting. Because, you know, if you're going to make story review videos about Genshin, and then you gas up Wuthering Waves all the time, I would expect, you know, some Wuthering Waves content about the story to be reviewed as well. But, you know, I only find videos, you know, criticizing Wuthering Waves story from individuals who aren't, you know, absolute suck-ups, who are more than willing to give a critique to Wuthering Waves video, which I will be reacting to a content creator who made a critique of the 2.7 story. Because I've been hearing that there's some things that's problems with the 2.7 story. I haven't played it yet, but I will play it this week and get a taste of it myself. I'm gonna say this right now: the 2.6 story, the first half was good, it was fine. Part 2 with Yuno, it was terrible, it was bad, it was mid to the nth degree. It was a bunch of BS for the sake of BS. Concepts were thrown into the story without any prior setup or anything, but like nobody really talked about that. Interesting, isn't it? Anyway, let's get to the reaction. I know y'all done hear me talking. Hopefully I don't make this video an hour-long reaction. Let's get into it.
A common consensus is that the NodKrai Archon quest is a masterpiece, but it is also, in many ways, a technical and structural mess. And the most
I would love for him to prove this.
interesting thing about it is that both of those statements are true. When version 6.0 dropped, the community reaction was almost unanimous. It was hailed as the new gold standard, maybe the best introductory chapter the game has ever had. The praise was overwhelming.
I mean, we technically already got an introductory chapter to NodKrai with Anefa back in version 5.8, so...
And for good reason. The narrative ambition, the character work, the way it finally pushes the main plot forward.
The main plot has always been pushed forward. I don't know where this idea came from where it stopped being pushed forward. Like, do niggas really think that? If niggas really think that this final point makes sense, you're a dummy, I'm sorry. For anyone who genuinely believes that the main plot for Genshin Impact has stalled and that the main Archon quest stuff is just filler content, I'm sorry, but you're a dummy. In the most respectful way, you are a dummy. Because I can easily call you a retard and keep it pushing.
It is a massive achievement, but that is the high-level view. That is the memory of the quest after the...
Ooh, I can't wait. Because he was already BSing when it came down to that 5.7 story. He was BSing like crazy. And I called it out right before it. So, we're about to see if he BSes again in this video.
Credits roll after it ended. The moment-to-moment experience of actually playing through its 8-hour runtime tells a slightly different story. It is a story of brilliant ideas being let down by clumsy execution.
How so? Please explain.
Powerful emotional scenes being undercut by amateur-ish presentation. So today we're not here to argue if the quest was good or bad. The answer is...
My nigga, your whole answer is the quest was bad. Why are we sitting here acting like that's not the question that's being asked here? You are answering the question. Your answer to the question is the quest was bad because of presentation. Just say it like it is if that's how you feel about it, bro. Don't sit here and beat around the bush.
It's both. Instead, we're going to deconstruct deconstruct this paradox. We will look at the disconnect between the story Genshin wanted to tell and the sometimes frustrating story we actually had to play.
Okay. Let's get it
through. Let's do a proper recap of the 6.0 Archon quest. The story begins with the Traveler and Inefa's journey to NodKrai. Upon arrival, the Traveler experiences a strong sense of deja vu, realizing that their spaceship first crash landed here, even though their memories are hazy. Inefa explains NodKrai's unique Kuvaki energy, and in Nasha Town, the Traveler and Inefa search for clues about the spaceship. They meet the owner of a tavern who mentions Grandmaster Varka of the Knights of Favonius has already passed through NodKrai and went off to buy some more milk. They also learn about Aino, a genius mechanic who created Inefa and a massive Kuvaki energy cannon to fight the abyssal wild hunt. Aino and Inefa have a heartwarming if slightly dysfunctional reunion. Aino confirms she hasn't seen any parts of the Traveler's spaceship. The Traveler then encounters Flins, a mysterious nonchalant-looking lightkeeper from the burial grounds. He possesses a unique lantern and talks about the wild hunt and the abyssal threats. He reveals he is stationed in the quiet of the graveyard, preferring it to urban life. And later they meet Llama, the mommy ASMR artist, the moon chanter of the Frost Moon Scions, who is distributing food. Llama reveals her people worship the Moon Maiden Kotar and possess a sacred relic, the Moon Marrow, which can reveal the past. She privately confides in the Traveler that the moon her people worship is fake and struggles with how to reveal this truth. The plot thickens when the Traveler is confronted by a phantom of their sibling. This sibling plays on their trust, showing them how to bypass the Scion's ancient trials to steal the Moon Marrow, promising it holds the key to their past. They succeed, but the Phantom reveals the deception and vanishes with the relic, leaving the Traveler complicit. Immediately,
Well, they don't reveal the deception until actually later, right? In that moment in the story, it was we were confused. The Traveler rather was confused by his sister's actions, quote unquote sister's actions, because it fell off. He was like, she's acting weird again. She's acting different than how she acted before. There's something off about her, right? That's the feeling he had throughout that moment.
News spreads that the Moon Marrow has been stolen. Simultaneously, Flynn's superior officer is found murdered, with evidence framing Flynn's, who has gone missing. The story now follows two parallel investigations, recovering the stolen Moon Marrow and finding the fugitive Flynn's before the Lightkeepers arrest him. The Traveler forms an alliance with Llama and the cynical intelligence broker, Glaive Keo, head of the Curatorium of Secrets, who assigns her chaotic good employee Jehoda to the case. The hunt for the relic leads to a major heist sequence as they infiltrate the heavily guarded Fatui facility. Jehoda showcases surprising skills, managing to obtain a high-level access card and navigate the complex booby trap facility. Inside, they discover the real thief, Llama's childhood friend, who betrayed her people out of a feeling of abandonment and gave the Moon Marrow to the Fatui. Sandrone, however, unexpectedly gives the Moon Marrow to the Traveler, stating she has no use for trophies. The investigation into the murder reveals that the officer they met earlier was an imposter. They eventually find the real Flynn's, who explains he found strange crystalline fragments that emit abyssal energy, which he stored in his lantern. These fragments attract Rarer, and Flynn's has been battling him in secret. The Lightkeepers' records on their officer's mechanical arm further reveals that the person they spoke with earlier was Rarer in disguise, who offlined the real officer and framed Flynn's. Rarer's motivation is to absorb Kuvaki energy to build his own fragmented body. The climax arrives as the Wild Hunt launches a massive attack. The Phantom sibling reappears, revealing his horrifying true form, Rarer of Sanari, one of the 5 infamous sinners of Kandria. He unveils his
something we learned about years ago. Okay.
Master plan. He impersonated the superior officer to get NodKrai's giant defensive cannon repaired.
Now, if you're wondering why I'm letting this part of the video play through, is because one, it's been like a couple weeks since I played the 6.0 story, right? And I appreciate the refresher to my brain.
repaired and then aimed at his location, while simultaneously spreading rumors in the city to cause mass panic. His goal is to have the city fire its greatest weapon directly at him, allowing him to absorb its power and regain his strength. The final act is a frantic, multi-front race against time. While Llama and Nefer try to quell the riots Rerer instigated in Nasha Town, the Traveler, Aino, and Nefa, and now vindicated Flins, battle their way into the cannon's control room to manually stop it. They only partially succeed. Rerer absorbs enough energy to form a monstrous body, and the heroes only survive the ensuing battle thanks to the timely intervention of both Sandroni and the science's goddess, Columbina. The quest concludes with the new alliances forged between Llama's scions, Nefer's curatorium, Aino and Enefa's workshop, and the Lightkeepers to face Rerer. The Traveler absorbs the Moon Marrow for safekeeping, and Flins is officially cleared of all charges, stepping up to take his fallen superior's place in the Lightkeepers, ready to lead the charge against the ongoing threat. With that proper context in mind, let's look at what made this story land so well. To really understand the impact of NodKrai, we have to look at where the game was right before it launched. The journey through the previous region, Natlan, well, the reception was mixed, which in online gaming discourse is a polite way of saying people were starting to get the pitchforks out. For a lot of players, the story just didn't quite land. Coming out of that, there was immense pressure on version 6.0. Players have come to expect a certain standard of quality. The bar was set incredibly high by the narrative complexity and the raw emotional power of Fontaine. NodKrai had to live up to one of the most acclaimed stories in the game's history. And then we got NodKrai. The initial response was immediate. Instead of being seen as just another solid update, the community consensus was that this was a new narrative benchmark for the game, a new higher standard that all future stories would be compared against. The sentiment online was loud. Across social media,
I will say this though, we haven't even finished NodKrai's story. That's the thing. We're in the beginning of NodKrai's story. I feel like any judgment towards the story right now, it feels way too early. Granted, we know the NodKrai story is going to last an entire year. My expectation for NodKrai's story, I want it to be the exact same level of quality that we got from the Amphoria story. Build up characters, flesh them out, this, that, and the third, connect the dots of X, Y, Z that lead to this grand conclusion.
Media forums and video essays, you saw the same phrases over and over again. One of the best story quests in the game, if not the best.
He's doing this shit again. Oh my god. Glaive Keo is doing the same shit he did in the last video, where he has a problem with people posting their experience with the quest, giving it a 10 out of 10 or whatever. And his response is, oh, well, why are people posting the good thing about the quest? Why are they posting these first? They should be posting their criticisms first. But he doesn't apply that same standard to Withering Ways at all.
Followed by the best version X.0 Archon quest we have ever had.
This is my biggest critique to him as an individual. You can't sit here and be like, oh, well, people are not going to post their criticism, therefore it's a problem since they're not posting that first. But when it comes down to Withering Ways, people get away with Withering Ways posting all the good stuff about Withering Ways, but not the criticism. Right? You can't have it both ways. Either we're going to follow the rule across the board, or we're going to nitpick which one gets to follow the rule.
On the surface, it looked like an anonymous, triumphant return to form. But that is where the story gets a little bit more complicated because that overwhelming praise doesn't quite paint the full picture. So let's start with what worked, because what worked really worked. The core reason this story felt so fresh and simple, they broke the formula. For 5 years, our journey has followed a predictable path. We arrive in a new nation, meet the Archon, solve its local crises, get our Archon-sponsored travel visa, and then move on. NodKrai.
Hold up. Let's go ahead and rewind that. No. That's never been the case for most of the time. New nation. So we're going to have to go from Leeway to NodKrai with this line of thinking, okay? New nation. When we entered into Leeway, did we meet the Archon immediately? No, we didn't. Meet Quirky Archon. All of them have their own unique quirks to each other. Yeah, sure. But when it came down to Zhongli, of course, we didn't know that he was the Archon until like the end of the entire Archon quest. So yeah, when it came down to New Nation, meeting A, we met A, but we understood the crisis of Inazuma first before we even met the Archon. When it came down to Sumeru, went to Sumeru, right? We met the nation first. Well, technically, if you count the summertime event that came before 3.0, we met the Archon first, technically, but we didn't know that was the Archon. But let's go with the 3.0 update and how it went. Went to New Nation. We did not meet the Archon until a little bit later. But we found out one of the crises about Sumeru at the beginning of the story before we actually met Nahida. So this order is still wrong. Okay, now when it came down to Fontaine, what did we learn first about Fontaine? We went to Fontaine, then we learned about the crisis, which is the prophecy, and then we met the Archon. Right? Because we met Lenny and Lynette first, and then we met Farina afterwards when she pulled up on the Traveler at the docks. Now let's go to the next one. Natlan went to the Nation first. At the time, there was no crisis at the beginning. There was no crisis. We knew that they were like preparing to fight in the Night Warden Wars. If anything, we met the Archon, but we didn't really met her officially. We met the playable characters first. And then crisis started, arriving the moment Kachina died. And that's technically where the story pushes forward, right? Where shit starts getting crazy in Natlan's story. The moment Kachina, falls and dies, and we have to save her from the Night Kingdom, that's where every other crisis starts building up to Act 4 and, of course, Act 5. Our official introduction to the Archon doesn't happen until Act 2, I believe, if I remember correctly. Now, for NodKrai, we didn't meet Archon because there's no Archon in NodKrai. The crisis that's going on in NodKrai was, one, the whole problem going on with the Fatui. So that's technically the crisis. And of course, we have the Abyssal Wild Hunt threat. So there's two crises. So we met Nation, crisis, no Archon.
Local crises, get our Archon sponsored travel visa, and then move on. NodKrai threw that entire structure out. It's an autonomous region with no Archon, no statues of the Seven.
Well, that's not true. Well, they have a statue.
None of the usual gameplay or story anchors we have come to expect. This single change had a massive ripple effect. The central conflict was no longer about regional politics or another Gnosis collecting scheme.
And what's the problem with those? When we know that Sarisa is gathering them for her plan to do whatever she plans to do with them, which they have yet to reveal that plan. I mean, yeah, it's a change up from the formula, but why are we sitting here acting like the other times we've seen this happen, we didn't enjoy those moments? Come on now.
The stakes became primordial. They are tied to the oldest, most fundamental parts of this world's history. The story immediately pivots to cosmic mysteries, the true nature of the moon, the false sky, and most importantly, the Traveler's own origins. NodKrai feels less like another chapter and more like a narrative bridge, a deliberate detour designed to transition the entire game from its Nation of the Year story into its endgame story. And
which is good. Like, I don't have no real complaints about that, honestly.
since there's no ruling god, this land becomes a neutral high-stakes battleground for everyone else. You have the Fatui, the long-absent Knights of Mondstadt led by Varka, and even the enigmatic witches Sabah, all converging into this one place. It's basically the
Enigmatic witches Sabah. I do not remember coming across this faction playing the story, unless that's supposed to be the Scions.
Even the enigmatic witches Sabah, all
Enigmatic witches Sabah. I don't remember this faction. Am I tripping? This faction didn't appear in the story.
converging into this one place. It's basically the Avengers crossover episode of Genshin, if everyone in the Avengers apparently hated each other. The conflict is immediately global in scope. The biggest signal of this change is the new antagonist Rarer. He is revealed to be one of the sinners of Kanria.
He's revealed to be one of the sinners. My nigga, we knew about this years ago, back in version 3.6. Was it 3.6? No. It was version 4.6, I believe. Yeah, 4.6. We learned the names of each sinner in version 4.6 with that Dainsliff quest, the bedtime story quest. The same quest, surprisingly, people were bitching about because this quest was too short. The quest was like 2 hours long, and people complained about it. And it was like, why are we complaining about this? Y'all niggas complain about a quest being too long, but then when they make it 2 hours long, it's a problem. Now it's a problem again? Bro, shut up. Anyway, let's continue.
A world-level threat tied to the deepest parts of the lore. It is a very different approach from Fontaine, which focused on a more abstract threat like the prophecy. Here, the danger is concrete.
It was an abstract threat because it was a prophecy, but it was, again, a prophecy made by the gods of Tevat, the heavenly principles, which, as a result of that Archon quest, it ends up destroying one of the 7 pillars of the Sustainer's world structure, which is the Hydro Archon. That whole concept is destroyed, which was a consequence of what happened in the story. Something that you claim that there are no consequences in Genshin Impact story for whatever God only knows type of reason for why you believe that or anyone else believes that nonsense.
Which focused on a more abstract threat like the prophecy. Here, the danger is concrete, personal, and a sign that the writers are finally putting the main plots front and center.
Why are we acting like the main plot wasn't put in front and center the entire time? The Fatui being a threat and collecting the Gnosis, that's a part of the main plot. The Traveler trying to understand why his sister's doing what she's doing and the whole Abyss Sword stuff, that's a part of the main plot too. Saving these nations from their crises, that's a part of the main plot too. All this stuff is important stuff. There's no filler in between this stuff. There is none. All this stuff is important stuff. I hate it when people sit here and say, oh, we're now finally focusing on the main plot. Like we haven't been focusing on the main plot for years now.
From a purely thematic standpoint, this was a masterful move that revitalized the story, raised the stakes, and promised answers to questions we have been asking for years. A grand cosmic story is nothing without the characters to ground it, and this is arguably where NodKrai shined the brightest. Let's start with the main character. The community's reaction to the travelers in this quest was overwhelmingly positive. For the first time in 5 years, the traveler was vocal, proactive. They finally felt present in their own story. The interesting thing, though, is how that improvement was delivered. For many players, myself included, the first half of the story felt familiar. The traveler was still a bit of a passive observer, a cameraman watching events unfold. Our main contribution was—
I'm gonna say this right now. I hate that claim people make because people act like the traveler hasn't gotten active in the story at all when he's been active in the story since day one. The traveler is not some passive observer that just sits there and watches. No. When shit gets down, he gets into it, whether it be he wants to or he's dragged into it. Why are we acting like the traveler does not get involved with these quests and he just sits there and just watches all the time? Just this cameraman who gets cucked by other 5-star characters, which is another thing I keep hearing people talk about, which is also bullshit. We're going to sit here and try to act like the traveler gets his shine stolen from him. I would love to know what moment and what part of the story did the traveler have a moment that was meant for him get stolen by another character. The answer is you're not going to find that because that doesn't happen. What happens is the story aims itself at the new character because this is not a moment for the traveler to shine. This is a moment for them to shine. And guess what? They make that character shine, especially when it's a moment meant for that character. If it's not a moment meant for the traveler to shine, then guess what? They're not about to give that shine to him, which makes sense. The main character does not need to always have the shine aimed at him when the story is focusing on another character. I don't care if it's a side character or a background character. For example, Adventure Time. We know who the main characters of Adventure Time are, but guess what? Throughout Adventure Time's entire run, all until the end, the story will always change its perspective to a different character, to background characters who you saw back in the earlier seasons of the story, of the entire show, and they're now becoming front main characters, a part of their own little side story that has no direct connection to what Finn and Jake got going on, right? Did that make the story bad? Of course not. Did it make Finn look like a loser because the camera wasn't focused on him 24/7? No. But people got this weird view of the traveler because of that. Because they see Withering Waves have the main character, the camera always on him because apparently other characters don't exist. And now they think, oh, the camera should always be on the main character. Like, no, the camera can go to other characters too. Especially when, again, if the story is meant for them to shine, guess what? The camera is just naturally going to go that way. If it's not a moment for the main character to shine, guess what? It's just not their moment, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Was nodding.
Hold on, let's go back.
Many players, myself included, the first half of the story felt familiar. The Traveler was still a bit of a passive observer, a cameraman watching events unfold. Our main contribution was nodding thoughtfully and occasionally asking Paimon to repeat what was just said.
No, the main contribution for the Traveler was him engaging with what the problems were, whether it be individual problems from like, oh, I know she needed help with something, or we go help her with her problem. Oh, Llama needs help with something, we go help her with her problem. Oh, Columbina, she needs something, or there's something to learn from her, we learn something from her. Huh? When we infiltrated the freaking bureau, did the Traveler just like, oh, sit around doing nothing, or did he engage himself with the plot? We know the answer to that question. He obviously engaged himself with the plot.
Louder! But somewhere around the middle, something clicked. The shift became noticeable. It was a slow burn, but at the end, the feeling was undeniable. The story was finally about them again. This was a critical success, especially when you consider the heated debate around the entire story, where many felt the Traveler was relegated into a passive side character. NodKrai seems to be a direct course correction to that specific...
I'm gonna say this. Now, if the reason people feel that the Traveler has been made into a side character in the story because, again, the Dainsleif quest stuff only happens like once a year, right? And information that's related to the Traveler gets saved for those quests. Now, if people feel that's the reason why the Traveler feels like a side character in the Archon quest, despite the fact he's blatantly not, he's actually getting involved, then I can understand that. But then again, people seem to forget that the Traveler's whole journey through this world is on purpose. This isn't something he just, kicking rocks, just waiting for shit to happen, right? No, stuff happens, he gets involved, or he gets dragged into it. In his journey to reunite with his sibling. And not just reunite with them, oh, we had a back reunite as in like the first time they reunited. No. The reunion between Aether and Lumine has to be an absolute genuine reunion where they're hugging each other. Yo, what's up, twin? It's been so long. Hey, tell me how your journey went. I'll tell you how mine went. Like, have a genuine family reunion with each other. Not these moments that we've had throughout the story where it comes off as a reunion, but it's really not. Because, they're still not together with each other. Right? And again, there's been moments throughout the main Archon quest where we get to see the Traveler. Well, when it came down to most Archon quests, up until Sumeru, the Traveler hadn't found any real information regarding their sister, right? I'm saying sister because I chose Aether, so that's why I'm saying that. So, we knew that, right? It's not till Sumeru where Nahida, the first Archon out of the last three that we went to previously, gave any information related to their sibling. And it was very important information, right? And it basically kind of explained to us how in the F nobody has ever seen our sibling at all. Because something obfuscated their fate that tied them to this world. And it's like, at the same time, somehow, some way, no one has encountered them at all over the course of 500 years. Right? Also, we know that the Abyss sibling, teleports through portals and stuff. But also, we also learned about how the Abyss Order was started and shit like that. But anyway, I'm gonna go on a rant, but anyway, let's get back to it.
Was relegated into a passive side character. NodKrai seems to be a direct course correction to that specific criticism. This renewed focus was supported by an incredible assembled cast. Take the two Fatui Harbingers, Columbina and Sandro.
Also, I need to say this too. There has been another thing people say, claim, or this goes back to the criticism I've seen. Well, I don't believe it's criticism. I think it's just bullshit. Where people sit here and say the Traveler gets his moments stolen from him by the new limited 5-star. But then if you go back and rewatch cutscenes where the Traveler is fighting an opponent or what have you, you will notice that through a majority of those scenes, the Traveler gets his moments to shine, gets his moments to show off his combat ability. Even if it's not him throwing elements around, we see how he get down with a sword. This man don't play. When it's time to pull that sword out, he pull it out and he get to work immediately. I even had someone try to argue with me about, the Traveler does get his scenes stolen from him. And I asked the person, provide the scenes and prove it. right now. They couldn't even provide it. So I was like, okay, let me provide the scenes where the Traveler never got his, moment stolen from him. And we got to see him shine and get into the action. Because, he's not a side character. He's a main character of his own story.
Droney. Instead of one-dimensional villains, they were presented as complex individuals with a snarky, surprisingly amicable dynamic. They felt like
Wait a minute.
two Fatui harbingers, Columbina and Sandroni. Instead of one-dimensional villains, they were presented as complex individuals with a snarky, surprisingly amicable dynamic. They felt
Wait, is he implying that every other villain we came across, or Fatui Harbinger rather, that we dealt with in previous Archon quests were one-note villains? And we are only getting multi-dimensional villains, or rather antagonists, now after all this time? If that's what he's implying right now, that's not true. Take a look at Child. Take a look at Scaramouche. Both of these individuals have some villainous qualities about them, or rather antagonist qualities about them. But we get to see multiple sides to their characters. We didn't just see one side to their character. The same thing went for Arlecchino. We didn't just see, Arlecchino be this cold-hearted, ruthless bitch. Like, no, we got to see the side of her being also caring, as a caring individual for the children of the House of the Hearth. And actually take what they hold dear serious. Because she genuinely cares for them. She changed the House of the Hearth for a reason from what it was previously. Because previously, the House of the Hearth would just have the children kill off each other until only one remains standing. Now it's not like that. Now it's just like, prove yourself. And if you want to lead this life, you can. But you just won't remember this life. Right? And then who was another villain we dealt with? I mean, I guess you can consider Gazoitoth, the Abyss villain that we fought in Natlan. You can consider that a villain one note because one, the Abyss didn't really have a personality to show. It was simply an enemy. So for Natlan, we didn't really have an enemy with that, needed or required multi-dimensional personality. Right? We didn't really need that. Fontaine, same way. We dealt with the Narwhal, which again, being that we didn't really need multi-dimensional personality from, because it's a beast that, devours shit. So we only had like 2 villains or antagonists throughout the entire Genshin story that had only one-note personalities. There's only 2 out of everything that we've experienced.
They felt like colleagues, a much more sophisticated take on antagonists. And then you have a character like Jahod.
They felt like colleagues. Why are we acting like we didn't see colleague-like behavior from the Fatui prior to this? Arlecchino and Child, when they had their interaction together, did that not come off as colleague behavior?
They were presented as complex individuals with a snarky, surprisingly amicable dynamic. They felt like colleagues, a much more sophisticated take on antagonists. And then you have a character like Jahoda. She generated almost zero excitement from trailers, but became a fan favorite in-game, a breakout MVP, thanks to vibrant animation and great comedic timing. The success of the cast comes from us chef towards building a character ecosystem. The story presents its cast in interconnected groups right from the start. This approach feels like a lesson learned from the critiques of the previous story quest. While they gave incredible depth to its core groups, it came to the cost of sidelining the rest of the cast. NodKrai, by contrast, man.
Are we referring to Natlan when we say this? Because if so, understandable. Because there's a lot of Natlan main characters who did not get a lot of fleshing out for their characters when they came down to the main story, despite the fact that they were supposed to be the heroes of their story or of their tribes. Like, for example, Homeboy Kanich, he didn't get any type of story depth related to his character. But characters like Mulani and Kachina and Auroran, they got depth to their characters. Shoot, Iensan didn't get no type of character depth at all, which is crazy to think about because she's the preview character for Natlan for like 5 years until Natlan finally dropped. Like, people were excited for Iensan, right? I made a whole video about why Natlan dropped the ball for a lot of people. Go check it out. It's on my channel.
manages to build its world through a wider, more integrated assemble, which paid off beautifully. With rather smart character writing, it is fitting that the quest structure was just as innovative. The big change here was the seamless integration of character stories directly into the main plot. The personal quest for the new 5,
which I didn't have a problem with, but so many people were like doom posting and afraid of this, right? So many people were like, oh man, once they add main character or the playable character's main story into the hold up. People were complaining about the fact that once playable characters' stories got added to the main story plot, they were like, oh man, it's going to be, the quest was going to be longer, which of course naturally that's what's going to happen. But at the same time, people were doom posting like it's going to like disconnect things, and then it's like I sit here and read those type of comments under comment sections of posts and videos, and I'm just thinking to myself, did y'all play the Euphoria story like at all? Have y'all not played that? Have y'all played Zenless Zone Zero at all? Where they integrate the playable character cast, personal stories into and weave it into the main plot so that it can make sense, so you can see their character development, this, that, and the third. For example, in Zenless Zone Zero, Koleda, standard 5-star stun unit. Her direct connection to the main plot of season 1 was because her father, had done something that resulted in this sacrifice, which is a creature being sealed inside of a monument. They track the signal to the hollow where the monument is, and they find the old prototype construction vehicle that their company makes, right? She looks inside and it finds bullet holes everywhere, blood or dried up blood and whatnot, and she suspects that something happened to her dad who had came here, because for the longest time she believed that her father had betrayed the company that he made, and on top of that, her as his daughter, because she believed that her dad was a piece of shit. So she essentially got daddy issues. But in this quest, it's revealed that no, he wasn't this bastard that she thought she was, that she thought he was, because of what happened. Because there's more to that story than what she initially thought. And of course, there's a big emotional moment for Koleda related to whether or not she forgives her dad for what happened and understands it better, this, that, and the third. She takes pride in her name of being a member and president of Bellabog Industries and all the other things and stuff. But that's just one example. I'm not going to get into the Star Rail example because Star Rail is freaking pretty obvious with the Euphoria story. Anyway.
Character writing, it is fitting that the quest structure was just as innovative. The big change here was the seamless integration of character stories directly into the main plot. The personal quest for the new 5-star characters Llama and Flins were woven into the Archon quest from the start to the finish. This single change fixed a problem the game has struggled with for years. Like, let's say, think back to Inazuma, where the main story would grind to a halt, forcing you to do other quests to continue. It was the
Yeah, that was a problem. But I will say this, right? The claim he's making right here, which is a bit untrue, right, is that he's saying that it's only now, with the integration of playable character story quests added to the main story, has it now gotten better. I'd argue that they were already on this step with Sumeru, and it's been a constant trend from Sumeru to now. Granted, like again, Natlan, there's a bit of faltering happening with Natlan. Don't know why. I don't know who was writing Natlan or who rewrote Natlan's story, because I don't know. Of course, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but something went on with the writing team with Natlan, and it felt like they were trying to speed rush through Natlan's story. You can feel it a little bit when you have characters who should be getting more character depth not getting it at all. And then you have a limited time event in version 5.3 that contains Hu Tao's story and gives more depth to her character. And that story is like way better written in comparison to certain aspects of Natlan and their characters. And it's just like, so whoever wrote the Archon quest for Natlan in relation to some of these characters clearly wasn't the same person who wrote that limited time event story for Hu Tao. It's clearly two different writers, and I need to know the name of the individual who either rewrote Natlan's Archon quest or wrote it point blank, period. Because they dropped the ball. And whoever it was clearly did not write the NodKrai story, because the NodKrai story was great.
Inazuma,
at least the beginning act. Now I will say this: thinking back to Inazuma, when it came down to like doing Ayaka and Yoi Mia's story quest, in the midst of trying to do the main story quest, it did felt weird to break off like that instead of just integrating it into the main story, which it should have been. Oh, volume is off. Hold up.
Years. Like, let's say, think back to Inazuma, where the main story would grind to a halt, forcing you to do other quests to continue. It was the video game equivalent of being in the middle of a spy thriller and suddenly having to stop everything to help two different people plan a fireworks festival. The whiplash was real. Or, look at Fontaine. Its middle acts were so disconnected that the community nicknamed the prison sequence the Fortress of Fillerpede, a long, boring piece of filler designed solely to pad out the story patch. NodKrai's approach is this.
Now, I will argue, I don't believe that the prison act was filler, but I do believe that we could have shortened down the time being in there, right? I feel like after the first day, there should have been transition scenes of us going through day 2, day 3, day 4, and then put us back into the story to do more investigation, right? Because we usually would do like a little bit, go get the meal of the day, then go hammer the thing in, press the button to hammer it in, and then, go to sleep, rinse and repeat. We would do that until it initiated the, montage transition scenes. But again, they could have cut that down a little bit. I will agree to that. That's the only thing I will agree to about the Fortress of Fillerpede.
Connected that the community nicknamed the prison sequence the Fortress of Fillerpede, a long, boring piece of filler designed solely to pad out the story patch. NodKrai's approach is the solution. An 8-hour story quest rarely feels like a slog because it all flows so smoothly with no jarring detours. Character development and plot progression are the same thing here. It is smarter than just combining quests though. The character conflicts became the very engine that drives the plot. For example, Llama's internal struggle with her religion is directly connected to the central mystery of the fake sky. More pointedly, Flynn's antisocial personality isn't just a quirk, it is the exact vulnerability that the villain exploits to frame him and set his entire plan in motion.
Yes, this is true.
The story doesn't happen to them, it happens because of them. From a game design perspective, this is an elegant solution. The business model needs you to be interested in the new banner characters, and the structure makes their stories essential. Playing the story makes you more invested in the characters, which in turn makes the story more impactful. It is a powerful loop that serves both the narrative and the business. So with a brilliant structure and revitalized plot, NodKrai should be a flawless experience. But this is where we have to talk about the disconnect between the idea of the quest and the experience of actually playing it.
Okay, here we go. This is the point of the story that I really need to see his criticisms. Let's see if they're either BS or if they hold weight. Let's get it.
This is where the glaring crack starts to show. First, the dialogue and the pacing. Even with the improved structures, many sections were criticized for feeling like lazy walking sims. There was a sentiment that, while most of the dialogue was essential, the delivery was often a slog. Players have pointed out similar
such as, can we get an example?
Issues in other acclaimed quests. It is that feeling of being trapped in a conversation with no dynamic gameplay to break up the monotony. But the bigger issues, the ones that really broke immersion for a lot of people, were the technical presentation gaffes. The most obvious example was the transition.
You would be in like a scene, and the game would just, do a PowerPoint slide, like a presentation. I half expected to see a created by Microsoft Office 2003 watermark in the corner.
Wait a minute, we've seen scenes like that before though. That's not nothing new. And if someone wants to argue that, this is the introduction to these characters, it's really not. This is not the point in the story that introduces these characters. These are glimpses that we skim through just to see the characters, out and about in the region. Because it's giving us the scene for that camera is meant to do one or two things. One, show off the characters that you are expected to meet in the story, and two, show off the surrounding area. That was the point of that whole scene. Now, could the camera work have been a little bit better? Stayed on the area a little longer? Right? Yeah, sure. But we cannot sit here and act like this camera work ain't something we've seen before. Right? To me, that whole point of the story was not even jarring in the slightest. Because I knew what the point of that was. What was another thing I seen? Again, the actual introduction to these characters doesn't even actually happen until we meet them. For example, when you first meet Flynn's, your first introduction to Flynn's technically is not this whole, oh, the camera zooming about through Nasha Town so you can get a view of the town and get quick glimpses of the characters. No, your actual introduction to Flynn's is when you bump into him in the hallway. With Llama, your first introduction to her is what? When you come across her as she's, doing her thing in the plaza of Nasha Town. What about Aino and Nefer? You meet them in their respective homes/businesses. Yehoda, you meet her when she runs into the building and be like, yo, boss, I'm back. Right? To me, that whole segment right there, that's like, whatever. Granted, I have like a little bit of criticism, like I just gave earlier, but like to me, this point wasn't jarring in the slightest.
For a game of this scale, the multi-billion-dollar scale, it feels incredibly amateurish. On top of that, you have the lip syncing, which felt incredibly bad here. And perhaps the...
I'm gonna say this right now. Throughout playing that entire quest, there were multiple moments where I caught the lip syncing, linking up, and not linking up. But at the same time, again, this is nothing new. Right? We've known Genshin Impact not to have direct lip syncing. And anytime that they did have lip syncing that was, on that matched up, it's purely by coincidence. That's all it is. Like, even when I was playing at the beginning of the NodKrai quest, right? Because I saw this criticism of, lip syncing not matching in Genshin Impact. And it's like, as I look back at old quests, I catch wind of moments of lip syncing and moments of non-lip syncing, which just shows that Genshin's lip syncing, it's a coin flip. It's either the line that's being delivered in English is going to link up or not. But we know that the original language made for Genshin Impact is Mandarin ? Or just Chinese, whatever. You get the point I'm making, right? So we know that, which is why the models are designed in that manner when they talk, when the lips start moving, right? It's designed for that particular language, right? We know Withering Waves went a different approach about it, and I would even say Zenless Zone Zero's lip syncing is also did the same thing that Withering Waves did. Star Rail is also the same. I haven't seen them. No, Star Rail has moments where the lip syncing doesn't match too, if I remember correctly. But anyway, yeah. Again, this is like nothing new stuff.
The strangest omission was the music. For a game praised for its soundtrack, so many long important scenes were just silent. It made the conversations feel empty, hollow, and I think it can kill the emotional weight. But I don't know, maybe when I was playing...
I would love for him to provide scenes showing this rather than him just saying it. Because this is another criticism I have when people give criticism about either Genshin, Star Wars Zenless, or even Wuwa, or just anything, rather. It's like, if you're going to give a criticism, can you please put on screen what exactly you're criticizing? Because you can't just tell me it. I need to see it for myself to truly believe it. Because, you know the whole saying, see it to believe it.
Playing it was bugged or something. And then there were the smaller nagging issues. The story sometimes expected you to know very obscure lore without explanation. The handling of the moon marrow, a super important artifact, was a letdown when Sandroni just gave it away. It has all the
She gave it away because she had no use for it. Hold up. Where's my phone at? Give me 1 second while I look around for this thing. I just had it. Here we go. Okay. Sandroni gave up the moon marrow because they were trying to get it. They got it, but then of course, naturally, they were like, okay, hold up, we don't need this. Let me see. Give me 1 second. I gotta scroll back in time. Okay, nope, that ain't it. Okay, it was the end of act, no. Yeah, okay, here we go. This was 3 weeks ago when I played it, okay. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. I found the moment. Granted, I'm listening to it on my phone. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. The reason she gave it up, it wasn't for some whatever reason. My bad. I just got done looking at the clip. I didn't turn off my mic so that, I wouldn't, have breaks in between it. But the reason she gave it up was because, one, she wasn't the one who put out an order to get this item in the first place. She blatantly says this. And she says, for the person who wanted to get this in their hands, they can come get it themselves. Mind you, she says this after her robot takes damage and someone refers to it as a robot instead of it by its name. So she took offense to that immediately. And even in the same dialogue where she gives up the bone marrow, we can see her expressing her disdain for either the individual who sent out the order to get this item, or just knowing that her precious robot just got damaged because of what just happened, and she's irritated. Like, we can see the fact that she's blatantly irritated. Even when we first meet Columbina, or not Columbina, but the marionette, she is shown to be easily irritated a lot. We've seen it through all the scenes we've seen of her. She can be easily irritated. That's one of the core personality traits of her, or traits of her, right? So she didn't just give it away for no reason. There was an emotional reason for why she gave it up, and another reason, a personal reason why she gave it up. Hold on, let me see. Let me see if there's more. I need to see if there's more. Give me 1 second. And the next scene right after that is the traveler saying, was there another harbinger who was after the moon marrow? Meaning that she was never after it to begin with. And she easily gave it up. And another thing that we need to remember is this too. The Fatui harbingers, we have known that an aspect about the Fatui harbingers is that they all work for their own self-gain, right? The Sarita has an end goal. They work for her end goal. But at the same time, she gives them the free reign to do whatever the F they want. So they can pick and choose between who they want to work with and who they don't want to work with. And we know that these people aren't really the best of friends among each other. They're colleagues, yeah, sure. But that don't mean they got to sit here and, help each other out all the time. Unless it's a necessity. If it doesn't benefit them, they're not going to continue helping. Right? For example, once Scaramouche was defeated by the Traveler and Nahida, guess what? Did the Doctor, Dottore, come back and collect Scaramouche to save him from being arrested or whatever? No, he left that nigga. He was like, well, he's a loser anyway. L nigga for real. And then he just kept it pushing. He left. Right? And that was a clear example. Shoot, take a look at Child and Senora, or El Senora, when their relationship that we saw on screen. They were not friendly towards each other at all. There was disdain in Child's voice when we're talking to Senora, with very justifiable reasons. These people are not really cool with each other. Hold on, let me see if there's more. So are you Jim Mount or what? I'd be more than happy to pick up where we left off, but I should warn you, I'm in a bad mood right now. Yeah, even more evidence with the dialogue I'm reading right now. She gave it up because she was irritated. She was like, man, F this. And just kept it pushing, which validates even more the point I'm making. Anyway, let's rewind. Let's get back to it.
a super important artifact was a letdown when Sandroni just gave it away. It has all the narrative weight of finding a legendary sword and the villain just goes, you can have it. It was taking up space. It was like that time.
Yeah, but we know that's the personality of the marionette. This isn't some random BS thing that happened. That's the personality of the marionette from everything we've seen up to that moment. So to me, this criticism just falls flat, knowing that this is her personality trait and knowing the relationship of the harbingers among each other and how they operate with each other. Seems somebody hasn't been paying attention to these characters and how they act with each other.
Finding a legendary sword and the villain just goes, you can have it. It was taking up space.
Also, why we acting like we don't see similar shit in like anime regularly, where you have certain characters who are like, oh, they're supposed to be the villains, but like, since if it's not working in their best interest, they will give up something and be like, nah, you can have it, bro. I don't want it. Like, we've seen this before. This is nothing new.
It was like that time where all of these Archons just give away their noses and be like, oh yeah, it's not important anyway. I'm gonna off-screen it. Like, it's the—
No, hold up. No. For each reason the Fatui got their hands on those noses was obviously due to the actions of either the Archon or the one that's like the servant to the Archon. Case in point, when it came down to Venti, because I don't know why he's framing it this way, when it came down to Venti had his blatantly stolen from him, ripped from his chest. And we saw how weakened he was after the fact. And he was kicked down by El Senora. What happened with Zhongli? Zhongli gave it up willingly because of a deal he made with the Sarita. You know, contracts and deals is something that's a part of Zhongli's character and a part of the core theme of Liyue Harbor as an entire nation, which was a part of the Archon Quest and the theme of the Archon Quest of Liyue Harbor. I don't know why we forgot that somehow. When it came to Inazuma, the traveler's life was saved by Yaimiko because Yaimiko gave up the Electro-Gnosis. And she even had a more valid reason to give it up because, one, she viewed that the traveler's life had more value than a Gnosis, which we all know it does because the traveler is a descender. And that is a very important role and title that the traveler has in the world of his story. In Teyvat, we know this. And on top of that, we know that in either, I think it was in the main Archon Quest for Inazuma, Yaimiko even states out her mouth that the Raiden Shogun long cut ties with Celestia, the entity, the place, the island in the sky in Genshin Impact, the ones who gifted the Gnosis to the individuals who won the Archon War. Raiden A saw no use for it anymore after a long period of time and gave it up. Which would make sense if you think about it, because this Gnosis belonged to her twin sister, the one who was actually the Archon of Inazuma, but unfortunately she died 500 years ago, and that role fell on A. So now A was playing the role of Archon, despite the fact not actually, winning the role of Archon. And she gave it up because, again, she saw no value in the Gnosis. So she gave it up. She had no use for it. Because, one, she already just showed how powerful she was without it. So why does she need it? She doesn't. So that's why she gave it up. With Nahida, how did Nahida get her hands, give up not only the Electro-Gnosis, but also the Dendro-Gnosis? It was a trade of knowledge because she's the god of wisdom and she trades knowledge. So she traded knowledge with the doctor, and the doctor in turn destroyed his clones to get his hands on the Electro-Gnosis. That was the payment that he needed to do, and he succeeded. Then when it came down to the Dendro-Gnosis, he gave Nahida more information that she had never known about in exchange for the Gnosis, her Dendro-Gnosis. And she gave it up. Because, one, the Dendro-Gnosis powered the Akasha system, which was a part of Sumeru's entire Archon quest, and played a big role in the whole thing about wisdom and knowledge and being, shackled by this device that, quote unquote, gives you all the knowledge you need, except for you trying to actually obtain it yourself, right? That was a consequence of her giving up the Gnosis. That played a big consequence in the story itself, because guess what? The Fatui got their hands on another Gnosis, and that Sumeru no longer would use the Akasha system, right? For Fontaine, how exactly did Arlecchino get her hands on the Gnosis? is because Neuvillette gave it up. And he didn't give it up with no reason. He even explains his reason for why he gave it up. One, because, Arlecchino helped, the Fatui helped with the whole evacuation when it came down to the flood. And on another point is because Skirk, the character that came in version 5.7, Skirk gave Neuvillette a warning about the Gnosis being like, it brings disaster and misfortune. So it's best that you get rid of it. And guess what happened? He got rid of it. He took heed to Skirk's advice and was like, yeah, I'm not going to keep this here in Fontaine. It's already bad enough we dealt with the prophecy and survived it, thank God. But I'm not going to let this thing cause more misfortune. So I'm just going to give it up to the Fatui. Let the Fatui have that misfortune. Now, when it comes down to Natlan, the Fatui didn't get their hands on the Gnosis at all, actually. So Natlan was the first ever time in the entire story of the entire formula of the story up till now where the Gnosis was never obtained. But they do leave a point in the end of the 5th act of Natlan's Archon Quest that sooner or later someone is going to come and collect this Gnosis. We don't know who, but someone will come to collect it. And so we're waiting for that to happen. Anyway, that's enough of that. Anyway, let's get back into it.
Just give away their Gnosis and be like, oh yeah, it's not important anyway. I'm gonna off-screen it. Like, it's the exact same feeling. I'm tired of this. And finally, Varka, teasing his arrival at the beginning and at the end of the quest without him ever showing up. It felt like a cheap bait and switch. And
this video was made 8 days ago because we just saw that he's going to appear in the 6.1 story. Again, also, everyone knows what Varka looks like at this point. We were told at the beginning of the quest that Varka had set off to do something in the northern parts of the of NodKrai. So the likelihood of us coming across him was never going to happen, right? Because simply it just wasn't his time. The first 2 characters coming out that came in this story, or the first handful of characters that we got in this story that we focused on, Varka wasn't a part of it. It was simple as that. They wanted to hold off Varka because this wasn't the time and place for him to shine. Version 6.1 is the time and place for him to shine. So I don't think that's a problem. Again, it builds anticipation for the character. Which is why when people saw his 3D model in the 6.1 live stream, people were fiending. They were like, yes, he's here, the GOAT. I know some people were talking about his 3D rendered model not looking the best. It looks good, but it needs some tweaking, which is like, yeah, okay, whatever. Right? But again, this is meant to build up anticipation. And to not only that, it was done for us to see what exactly he was hunting down in the northern parts of NodKrai. And then at the end of Act 2 of the story, we find out who exactly he was hunting and what exactly he was up to. He's been chasing after Rerir. Because he pulled up on that nigga from behind. Because he was like, hold up, someone's following me. And he was like, yo, what's up, twin? So how you been doing? He pulled up on that nigga.
And at this point,
again, it builds anticipation.
And at the end of the quest, without him ever showing up, it felt like a cheap bait and switch. And at this point, Varka is less of a character and more of a mythical cryptid, occasionally cited in off-screen events. Just let me see the blonde hot guy. It is not that hard. This huge...
I can believe he's really having a whole rant complaining about this, despite the fact that nigga is coming in 6.1. Granted, again, this was 8 days ago. This was before the live stream. Was it? Yeah, this video was before the live stream, obviously. But then again, it's like, we know he's coming in NodKrai, just wait. Like, even if he wasn't coming in version 6.1, in terms of, like, not playable character, but in terms of his appearance in the story, there's nothing wrong with waiting for him. It's called building anticipation. Something most stories do when it comes down to characters that they hold to high regard. For example, Madara Uchiha in Naruto. Madara Uchiha was talked about a lot throughout Naruto. In particular, Naruto Shippuden. Right? So much talk about Madara Uchiha this, Madara Uchiha that. It was so much talk about the Sage of the Six Paths this, Sage of the Six Paths that. It took a while before they appeared in the story because this was the point in time for them to appear. They couldn't appear before. This is the point in time where they needed to appear in the story because, the author designed it that way so that all that anticipation and build up for the character would land and make sense for why it is that they're appearing now in the story, right?
Huge-chested, blonde guy. Just let me have a seat. But anyways, when you pull all of this together, where does that leave the NodKrai Archon quest? You have an overwhelming success story, a compelling setting, an evolved protagonist, excellent characters, and an innovative structure that set a new standard for the game. But that triumph was held back by significant, almost basic, flaws in the execution. The jarring transitions, the bad lip sync, the silent scenes, and the moments where the pace—
Silent scenes, aka there was no music playing, which, again, he didn't provide any evidence to show this, because I would like evidence for this. And anyone who's watching this reaction, please, if you have any evidence of what he's talking about when it comes down to silent music scenes. Also, I would even argue this. Scenes where there's lacking music doesn't... I don't know why... Okay, that's just his point of view, but from my point of view, scenes lacking in music isn't, that big of a deal when a lot of anime do this too. Like, when there's a conversation happening between two characters in anime, depending on what the conversation is about, depends on whether or not there's going to be some music behind it. If it's just a casual scene or whatever, of conversation, there's no music behind it. If it's a scene where people are being goofy or whatever, there's some music behind it. And you can tell by the tone of the music, right? Whether it be some jingle bells or some crap. But if it's a serious moment, you can tell when the OSD starts playing. And you can feel the seriousness, right? But like, even when there's times when there's no music playing and it's just dead silence, I'd argue that's meant to capture your attention and make you focus on what the conversation is. Because if it's all this music playing in the background, when that music cuts and it's dead silence and you just hear the two characters talking, you know it's meant to be serious.
The pacing grinds to a halt, and that is the core tension of this entire update. You have this brilliant, ambitious narrative vision being undermined by its own technical shortcomings, and then there's a fundamental disconnect between what the story achieved on paper and how it was delivered to the player. In a way, this paradox—
Again, the things he mentioned as criticisms, I'm not gonna lie, they just come off as lackluster because I have a completely different experience. With the visuals that were shown, because the transitions, which was only one time throughout the entire quest, we're using one-time moment of quote-unquote transitions to be like, oh man, it held back the entire quest. No, sorry. No, it didn't. It really didn't. People pointing out that moment and being like, oh man, it hindered the quest. No, it didn't. Because guess what? When we got to those introductions with those characters, guess what? The camera was moving. It was doing what it's supposed to do. And, this, that, and the third. So don't know where people got this idea from that this one scene completely like undermines the entire quest. Like, no, it didn't.
Disconnect between what the story achieved on paper and how it was delivered to the player. In a way,
I'd argue that every piece of information that was delivered to the player was delivered in a pretty straightforward manner and pretty engaging, to say the least. There was never a moment where I'm playing through the quest and I'm listening to the characters have their conversations or engaging in a conversation related to what they're planning to do, what's happened, or even with their introductions. There was never a moment where I'm just like unengaged with the scene because it doesn't feel engaging. I felt pretty engaged. Even when the Traveler had their own personal moments with Columbina, which, interesting, I don't know why he didn't mention that in this quest, in this recap, or even throughout his video. Like, the Traveler's, whole interactions with Columbina were also very engaging as well. I don't know why he didn't mention that. That was weird. But anyway, like, those were very engaging on top of that. So we get a taste and feel of her character and her personality.
This paradox is something we also see with Fontaine. Both quests seems to follow a new design philosophy, the creation of a flawed masterpiece, The writers have learned that a powerful character-driven emotional payoff can forgive a multitude of sins. Fontaine's finale was so spectacular that it made players forget how boring the middle section was. It proved that nailing the landing is what cements a story in the community's memory. NodKrai's success, despite its own flaws, kinda reinforces the idea. It is a new peak for the story, but it's an imperfect peak, built on the belief that a powerful ending is worth an uneven journey. But that
I'm still confused about, like, he keeps mentioning this uneven journey, but like, he doesn't even provide examples. He just says it, but he doesn't provide examples. Like, he mentioned the whole thing with the music being silent. He doesn't show any scenes to show what he's talking about. Then he mentions the whole transition scene. That was one moment throughout the entire two acts, and that was at the beginning of Act 1. That whole quote unquote transition scene. That was the only one that people were complaining about or people would like bitch about, right? That was one thing. So why are we mentioning like 1, 2, 3 things that are like really minute stuff to then be like, oh man, this whole thing got held back because of that? Huh? Doesn't even make sense. Like if it was a dumpster fire from top to bottom, yeah, sure. I'd be like, okay, I agree. But like, again, mentioning these moments that can easily be just brushed off as design choice and just like with the things I've already, said in this video already, it's just like these aren't really good complaints, or rather, these aren't really good criticisms to me, at least, that justifies claiming that the quest was held back by these quote unquote these problems or these moments that hindered it. Like, I'm not seeing it because that's not what I felt throughout playing through the quest. And mind you, I was very attentive to a lot of things happening, whether it be characters lip syncing, body poses, facial animations. Like, I was very attentive to all those things because, I usually see people sit here and claim that, oh, Withering Way is the greatest thing since sliced bread. His storytelling is great. Oh, they don't reuse body poses. They don't use black screen, white text, this, that, and the third. But then when you actually play the game and you notice it, and it's like, no, they do use this same exact shit. But anyway, and it's done in a similar manner as well. But anyway, yeah. I don't think I have anything else to say about this video. I will say this video was not what I expected it to be, because I expected the same type of video he did for the version 5.7 Archon Quest. I'm not gonna lie. I came in this video very prejudiced, very biased. I'm not gonna lie. But I am shocked by the review nonetheless. But hey, I guess that's a good thing, right? Shows that there's duality to people, and not to expect everything that someone does to be, something that always, follows a certain trend of line, or not trend of line, follows the path that you would predict it to follow, right? I don't know whether or not to like or dislike this video. I'll just keep it neutral. But anyway, I think the video was decent. There were some things I blatantly disagree with, obviously, and some things I provided extra context to, but nonetheless, the video is a decent, good video, decent to good. I would say that. Yeah, like, sub, turn on notification bell, join the YouTube Discord, so you'll know when I'm streaming and when I'm not streaming, so you get a more direct announcement rather than waiting for YouTube, because YouTube community posts don't land that fast. I'll leave a link to Glaive Keel's video in the description below, and I'll see y'all in the next reaction. Later, peace. Also, how was your day today? All right, I'm out.